Hello, hello, hello. My name is Tope Fajingesi, and I am honored and pleased to welcome you to this, amazing, incredible session of She-E-O. This year, we are doing something different, something that we've never done before, and I am so super nervous about doing this because we usually have these conversations in a closed door setting, but the feedback that we've received from people is that no, there's no point having conversations about gender relations without the men being present. So today we decided that we're going to do it differently. We're going to have those conversations, and we are going to have some men in the audience with us, some men in the room with us. And whew, I can't even imagine how this is going to go, but you walk with me as I introduce you to two. We're going to have two sets here. The first set has, well, all sets have my friends actually, but my first two friends that'll be joining us on stage today are my very good friend and former colleague from work and from school, Patrick Okigbo. Patrick, welcome to the CEO Hot Seats.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sope. It's great to be here.
I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also going to welcome also my friend and the friend of my husband, Imam. He's an Imam. So let me put it this way, Imam Monsur Olajide.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to a very wonderful conversation this morning.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so, so much. Whew, without much ado, we're going to start. And I've already given you guys the rules of the engagement, that everything here is we are going to keep it real, even if the opinions are not popular, even if the opinions are going to cause some uproar. We're going to keep it very, 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 very real. And so I urge you to please not think about the eyes that are on us right now, but to also to help us think about the mission. And so I'm going to start with you, Patrick. We're going to start with the idea of masculinity and leadership, as
Mhm,
we have learned it from home. And
mhm.
culturally, many of us were taught that the man must have the final say. But what happens when that belief no longer serves the relationship? Have you ever had to shift this thinking? When and how did that shift happen? If there was any struggle, we want to know about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Tope. And if from time to time I call you yeah, please, the participants should forgive me because I've known you for a while now, and that's the name I call you all the time. But you see, that's a good topic we're discussing today: masculinity in African settings, and there's a reason for it. If you look at other cultures, as cultures evolve, gender roles will evolve, and these things change. There's an education component to it, there's an economic component to it, but and religious as well, cultural. In my specific example, I kind of grew up in a slightly different home. My father was, yes, a strong male figure, but I grew up around very strong women as well, so he had to he may have disagreed with some of the things happening around him, but he kind of shielded us from those disagreements. And what we saw was two adults from time to time they would negotiate roles, but it was done in a very convivial atmosphere. So that's kind of the experience I had. And now that I'm a father, a husband, and a father, I find myself having to negotiate those roles as well. And the woman I'm married to may on the surface appear to be soft, but she's another strong woman, so I have to negotiate those roles with her. Have there been times when I've had to shift position? Yes, obviously in our relationships, you're constantly negotiating one thing or the other. And I think the biggest thing is really learning to respect that I am dealing with another human being who grew up, many years, their own experiences, and having to respect that she has her point of view, which are valid as mine. So I can't really, and I really thought about it, I can't really pinpoint a particular instance where I held on to something so strongly that I had to make a decision that is out of character for me. I see that in our relationship, it's really what's the best for both parties, done respectfully. You can't get your way all the time. You win some, you lose some, but provided that everything is really to advance the union, I don't see it as winning or losing.
So before I go to Imam, I want to say something, two things actually. The first one is that if you know Patrick's wife, she's actually very gentle and very, very, just very gentle. So I don't know what he's talking about. But secondly, I've heard men say, I'm making this decision. This decision is final and it's for the good of the union. As though the man has the monopoly of truth of what's best for the union. Have you ever found yourself in that situation where you know that
no.
doing is the best?
No, and I don't even see where that would be the case in my particular instance. I don't arrogate to first of all, as a person, irrespective of whether I'm dealing with my wife or anybody, I don't arrogate any great wisdom to myself, right? I don't think that I know it better than the next person. I think I have very strong opinions, and I'm willing to discuss and debate very vehemently my views, but I always leave room that there is something I may not know. And I think if we approach relationships from that perspective, that we're not the author and finisher of this argument, and I hate arguments. I believe in debates, so in debates, you're bringing your point of view. In arguments, you're trying to win, So for me, it is bringing my point of view. We mix it up, and then we agree on what we think is best for our family.
Okay, all right. I'm going to let you rest for a minute, and I'm going to go to Imam Olajide now. So our parents, unfortunately, you and I are of the same religion. So I can reference Islam now. Islam says that, at least based on the interpretation of the Imams, it gives us so many tools, and some of those tools sometimes, can be challenging, in today's relationships. Is there, and to unlearn those tools can be very difficult for many men and even women alike. Is there any belief or any lesson or any of these tools from your own upbringing that you have had to confront and probably reject, when dealing with your, partner today?
Thank you so much, Madam Fajan Besi. And once again, thank you for having me on this program. Absolutely. I think some of the teachings and training and tools we received, especially from our African background, may not be relevant in today's relationships. But as far as religion goes, as far as Islam goes, I think each gender have been assigned specific roles, responsibility, and rights. And I don't think that is much of a conflict, because at the end of the day, what Islam will always preach to spouses is compassion and mercy. So when compassion and mercy rules in the family, then there shouldn't be any problem adjusting to the reality of the time. So going back to our African background, like I said earlier on, many of the teachings we received may not be relevant in today's world, not because they are bad per se, but because society and norms are constantly evolving. And the rules of engagement in today's family will, to a large extent, depend on the country or society we live in. So when we are confronted with the reality of our social, cultural, and economic situations, then unlearning is not a choice at that point. It becomes a necessity. So definitely certain things we have to unlearn based on reality. So I'll give you a specific example relating to my personal experience. As a father raising a family in America, I can tell you proudly that all parental duties were shared between myself and my wife. And when I say that, I mean literally everything from changing diapers, getting kids ready, dropping them off and picking them up from school, attending the games, cooking, cleaning, laundry, and all of that. So, and if we juxtapose that with our African experience, we will find out that our fathers, when we were growing up in Africa, were never expected to be physically involved to that extent in our, day-to-day activities because the African mothers were culturally expected to play the role. And also, there was adequate support from the extended family, the grandmas, the aunties, and the nieces, and all that. So the African father is not naturally exposed to all of that. But here we are in America. How do you deal with that? The extended family structure is missing. You're just here with your wife and you got your children. She has to go to work. You have to go to work. So definitely both of you have to work out something that's really practical for your situation.
Well, I hope the men are listening because, there are so many challenges that women have. Not only are the women supposed to go out and join hands when it comes to providing for the family, but those women are also supposed to be the ones to take career breaks. They're also the ones supposed to wake up in the night and change diaper. They're also the ones supposed to pick up the kids from school. And there is, like you said, no extended family. So that, men, if you're listening, that is an imam telling you that there's some things that we have to unlearn because grandma is not here. She did not get visa. So we have to do better. Patrick, I want to ask you a similar question, but also, along those lines. And this is from you who, is an African man, but you have a career in the diaspora and you've worked in the diaspora. And I remember one of my friends who's an executive recruiter told me that he had to tell an African candidate one time to please remove the chip on his shoulder because the guy will go to every interview and it will just be a challenge because he's seeing the women as sort of less than. But some of these things that we carry as Africans, whether men or women, we carry to the workplace. So, what are some of those things that you had to remove from the time you were in a Accenture and your hustle in Nigeria that I shall not name to, coming here, working in, Citibank and some other places? What are some of those things?
Okay, let me start from what the Imam said, and then I'll come to your question because there are some similarities. I mean, the Bible as well in Ephesians 5, says very clearly, women submit to your husbands, right? And many of our men, Christians, will hold on to that and say to the wife, you must submit. That's what the Bible says. Now, I don't want to get into the whole biblical or religious fight, but you said we should be as open as we can. And I would say that both the Bible and the Quran, were written as, from my point of view, historical documents, right? You can then claim that they're inspired by whomever, that's okay. But if you look at how life has evolved, there were times when these gender roles were clearly defined. And it was because of the time we lived in, when men had to go out and do battle, win war, win land, and then the women would take care of the home front. Things changed with the Industrial Revolution. Women now started working. With the Second World War, women fought alongside men. So those gender roles changed as economic and political evolution happened. We are where we are today, that in reality, those things that the Bible said, because that's the one I know, I don't really understand the Quran so much, but where the Bible says that a woman must submit, you must put it in the context of the time when it was written, not today. In today's time, the woman has the same rights as you. That's what I saw between my father and my mother. Not minding that I know the society we grew up in. That's what I see today in my marriage, that both the man and the woman have the same rights as human beings. Right? Now, if you take that by extension to the workplace, it's no different. It's no different. You're dealing with human beings and you show them respect. I mean, you mentioned Accenture. Maybe again, because one worked in a global international firm, where the values were completely different from the values in those Nigerian firms, in Nigerian firms, that's how we were raised. I mean, Accenture, one of the core values is respect for the individual. So it doesn't matter whether the person you're dealing with is a lady who just graduated from the university the other day, or even an office assistant. You're expected to respect them like individuals. And I think that in everything we do, if we bring that level of respect to every relationship, we're not going to have any of these problems, these gender disparities that we have. Why would you be sleeping when it's time to change the baby's diaper, when you know that the mother has been with the baby all day long when you went off to the office, and will be with the baby the next day when you go off to the office? I mean, during her maternity leave, right? So you know it behooves on you. It's just it's the human nature, to say, okay, I'll take the night shift, you sleep in. When I go off to work, you deal with the baby. When I come back, I take over. And if you get to work and you're sleepy, pop into the restroom, use the disability stall, get 20 minutes of sleep, and then you continue trotting along. And I'm giving you the secret to how I managed it with 4 kids. But I think it comes down to just having a human pity, respect, in all of our relationships.
And thank you very much. And I think, honestly, to go back to the Imam now and to quote the Quran, that what really we want to do is to remember that the Quran says that what he has put between your hearts is not just love, it's mercy. And so that was one of the things that you said, Pato, mercy. Like if you show mercy towards the other person that you're in this relationship with, or towards this person that you are working with, you will understand that you need to also be there. That you need to also, just show mercy. So Imam, Olajide, let me ask you this question. And Pato mentioned some things about kids. And so I want to pick up on that. Kids watch everything. They observe how we act, and they observe more than they listen to what we say they should do. And so, what is it that you specifically hope that your children can learn about love and about power from your relationship today? And how are you teaching both your sons and your daughter, to be a little bit different, or teaching them differently from how your father taught you?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Thank you. I think first and foremost, I would like to say we are a people of faith, and God, our religion, our faith is the cornerstone of our family. We hold religious values very dear, and I hope the kids will continue on this tradition for their own lives when the time comes for them to move on. And secondly, I think one powerful thing that I hope they can equally learn from, that is the one of the bedrocks of our relationship, is emotional stability. I mean, everybody has to be, right. We need to stay focused. We need to see things from the right perspective. And this will live as a lifestyle day by day. And hopefully, as they're observing and learning from real actions as opposed to what we say, that would help them growing up. Number 3, I think communication is something that a lot of spouses take for granted. And in my role as a counselor, as an imam, I've seen this, several times, where there's an issue between couples, and at the end of the day, you find out that they are not even talking, they are not communicating. The issue that they're making a big deal of, turns out to be something that is very simple and easy and straightforward. So communication between spouses is very essential for harmony and peace in the house. And number 4, support. Just as I mentioned earlier on from Quranic teachings, mercy and compassion. And that naturally requires all partners to be supportive of each other in a relationship. So we don't take that for granted, and the kids are seeing and observing that. Number 5, respect. So respect is absolutely a necessity. in an environment where you want love to thrive. So if there's no respect in the home, I don't think you can actually claim that you have a true love environment. So, number six, I also like to talk about trust. There must be trust in the relationship. And in actual fact, I think marriage derives its power and strength from trust, unity, and the common purpose between the spouses. And we should let the kids see this in practical terms, not just talking to them or telling them what love is, what trust is, what respect is. We should be living it every minute, every second of our life so that they can see it. And finally, I'll say a friendly and cordial atmosphere in the house is also very important. Uh, at all costs, we need to avoid a toxic environment. And if there happens to be any issues or conflict between the spouses, they should try as much as possible to shield the children from that. So, in order to safeguard their mental health and prepare them for what lies ahead, this will be a responsibility that both parents should take seriously. And I think the second part of the question is regarding how I was raised or how we were raised in general. Uh, do we think we should raise our children in a similar way or use the exact mode and approach that we were exposed to? I'll say, first of all, I'm very proud of my own upbringing and values that my parents instilled in me, such as, righteousness, discipline, God consciousness, dignity and honor, humanity and selflessness. I'm very proud of all of those, values instilled in me. But what I would say rather would be um, those teachings. I think we parents of today need to adapt them. All the teachings and training we receive, we need to adapt them uh, to the reality of our time and also build on that by adopting new learnings and ways of achieving excellence. We don't have to rely dogmatically on what we learn. We should adapt that to the reality of our situation, as well as taking new learnings and ways of doing things that would achieve the same goal that we intend to achieve. A quick example before I yield the floor, I know we're pressed with time here, is, having a good open communication and family dialogue in decision making and conflict resolution in the family. I can tell from my own personal experience, from time to time, my dad, we, got all of us, especially on the weekend mornings, we'll all be in the living room and it will have, share some important information, counsel or admonition, whatever it was at the time. But we have this opportunity of sitting around him and learning. So I picked on that. So in my own situation now, we have a very good, open communication and dialogue in our family, and that's how we make decisions and resolve conflicts from time to time, and it has been very helpful.
Okay, so but before I let you go, what is it that you will not take from your father? What is one thing that you'll be like, okay, you know what, this was good, but it does not serve me?
In all honesty, I can think of one. And I mean, this is not, I think it's okay if I praise my father. By the way, it was actually an imam too.
Oh,
So I picked from him. He was a community leader. It was somebody that was, highly respected and looked up to within the family, within the community. And in that wise, I'm just being very honest. There is absolutely nothing I can say from his, you know, good example that I would say, no, I don't want to. I can actually say I'm not doing enough. So that's that would be my submission on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I take that question?
Please. Can you?
I think
Yeah.
I know where you're going with this. Okay, so one thing that my father didn't do well that I'm trying to do better at is more communication, right? So he didn't talk much. He, at least I didn't get a sense that he shared enough. And I was raised that way. Before I got married, I didn't think I communicated that much. So if you ask my wife today, what do you think you would like Patrick to do better at? She would tell you he needs to communicate more, right? And I'm struggling with that. I know it's important, and I'm struggling with that. Yeah, and I'm learning ways to do that. The second thing that maybe I've also learned in marriage is that feelings are valid. Yeah. So I can be quite very. So when my wife at the beginning, when she says to me, "Oh, I feel I don't like the way," or I feel that you did something, or I'm like, how is, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so that's your feeling. The intent behind what I did is valid. The way you feel about what I did is on you, so you deal with your feeling, right? But over time, I've learned that feelings are valid. And when she says that I don't like the way you did something, it's not about the intent behind what I did. It is that she does not like it. Yeah. And I'm learning, or at least I think I've learned to respect that. The other thing is, and I agree with the Imam, that it's important that we create an environment where, even where there's conflict, that the way we manage the conflict, that we're setting the right examples for the kids. We're the best books they're ever going to read, right? On marriage, on relationships, etc. So we try not to disagree in front of the kids. And I know the cues now. I know when she doesn't want to discuss something, or when she disagrees with me, and we'll pack it. And when we're alone, we can discuss those. Something else, when I was growing up, again, maybe back to gender roles, I was kind of the only son. So I can't cook to save my life, so like right now, forget about it. I can't cook. Raising 3 boys and a girl, what we've insisted on is that all of those roles that you would think are gender roles, everybody's sharing them. So all my sons can cook. I mean, they can actually go on a TV show and win, right? Same for the girl. The boys, when they're growing up, will wash the car. The girl now washes the car as well. So there are no disparities in gender roles. At least the way we're trying to raise them. Over.
Okay. All right. Okay. And and I think I'm here to be the lawyer for Willie, your wife. So if there is any kind of like misrepresentation, I have a duty to protect my client. But so far I haven't seen any yet. And I'm also the lawyer for Imam's wife, because she's actually a very good friend of mine. So, but Patrick, I want to stay with you, and I want to go there. The few minutes that we have left now, the two of you, I'm going to be really very, very brutal now. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm going to be very personal, because we all know that you people go into some sort of cave life. When things are not going well, you just enter that cave, and that's the end. Nobody's seeing you again. You're like Zachariah and all of those, historical figures. But think about a time that you were deeply misunderstood in your relationship. What was the misunderstanding about, if you can tell, as much as you can tell us? And what did that moment reveal to you about your needs, your fears, and your growth areas as a human being?
Yeah, so I think I'll say it's probably at the beginnings of the relationship, the marriage. So at the beginning of the marriage, the way I reacted to things and the way she reacted to things were slightly different. We're still working around the relationship, and without getting into specifics, I think the heart and soul of it was respect. So the way I think for me, I would say then I don't care too much about love. What I really want is to know that I'm respected. Yeah. And the way we navigated around it is really at the heart of it, where it's not about, you can have a point of view, but again, the way the point of view is presented, just to show that you see me, you know my views, and you respect that that my views are valid, and we can have that conversation and agree on something. And I think we've walked around it and we understand ourselves well. And I know what it means to love her and to show her that she's loved, and she knows what it means for me to know that I am seen and respected. I think those are, without getting into the specifics of what it is. But for me, yes, that was the key. Just making sure that she knows that she's loved. So let me spend a minute on this. Getting into marriage, I felt that my intent should be obvious to you. So there are things I do that you should know that I love you, right? And I don't need to spell it out in black and white. I have since learned that you need to show and ensure that the person you're showing sees that they are loved. Yeah, that is something I had to learn. And I think what she has also had to learn is she's very respectful and all of that, but that I know that I'm being respected. I don't know if that makes sense.
I just wanted you to say it louder so that my husband, who is at the farm, can hear. That it's not about your intention. It's not about your intention, because this is something that this is a question I put in for myself, because there will be times when I'm like, no, I don't understand what you're saying. This is how I feel. And you'll be like, no, you're not in my mind. You don't know if that's what I meant. I'm like, I'm not in your mind. The exact same reason we're having this conflict is because I'm not in your mind, but I'm telling you how what you have done lands on me. And it's for you to see it, validate it, and not just negate it.
Whew. So me of 20 years ago would feel like, you should know. You know me, you know I love you. So why do you need me to spell it out? Right? Me of 20 years ago would be like, well, if you don't feel it, I can't help your feeling. That's your feeling. You deal with it. But over time, I've seen that those feelings are very valid. And when someone says to me now, I feel like I stop. Yeah. And I respond to that. And so on. Over.
Thank you so much. Imam, let me come back to you, and still on this issue of, your own feeling. And I want to ask again how you were taught, not just from home, and it could be from home, it could be just socialized, to deal with grief, to deal with disappointments, to deal with, failure as a young child, as a young man, and how that has shaped or even changed how you deal with those setbacks today.
Thank you. I think once again, I cannot overemphasize the role and importance of my religious upbringing. I quite admit the fact that not everyone had the privilege of being the son of a pastor or the son of an imam, but I definitely cherish that experience. So, like I said, my dad was a religious leader, and part of his core responsibility was to be the chief consoler to people when they're grieving, and be there for them in tough times, and in all ways possible. So I picked that up, at a very early age, and so dealing with life challenges, including disappointments, grief, failure. It's something that I got an early exposure to, particularly because of the religious environment I grew up in. So I would say we were all made to understand at a very early stage in life that, some days in life will be for you and some days will be against you. But if you truly look at the totality of your life, you would certainly find reasons and causes to actually be grateful to God, and observe that you've been blessed in so many other ways, even though you might have experienced a failure or disappointment in some aspects of life. But come on, take a look at other things. You are having it good in other ways, but not just in that particular area where you were focusing on. So we were exposed to that belief. And of course, they believe in destiny that, if it didn't happen, God didn't want it to happen. Continue to pray and, re-strategize and, stay focused and continue to put in the effort. And so long as you're still breathing, there is still hope. And that is, in general, the kind of exposure I got. I would say I was really fortunate for that. Some people may not have had it that good, but I really thank my parents and give glory to God for having the opportunity to grow up in that environment where at an early stage, they let you know what life is all about, that some days you have challenges and you have to face them as a man. And when things don't, go the way you want, you don't, kill yourself because of that. You have to embrace life and, retool and, forge ahead. So I'll say that was amazing. I wish I had other ways to look at these questions. I do know and recognize definitely that to some people who had a very rough upbringing or background or never had the privilege of growing up with their parents, so that might not be the case. But I do pray and hope that as they are growing up, they have been able to find hope and other resources to help them, see life as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we're getting to the end, and I want to tell people that the pairing of this segment is very intentional. And at in about a couple of minutes time, we're going to flip the guests, and we'll have two guests, also a Muslim and a Christian. But you will see when we get there why we paired this, where we had this pairing. And so I'm really enjoying this, and I'm loving how the perspectives is so rich. So Pato, let me go back to you, and Patrick, Mr. Okigbo, not Pato. Mr. Okigbo, let me go back to you. When was the last time that you feel like you failed? And who, if anybody, did you talk to about that failure?
Okay, so this is a very interesting question. And this is where I'm going to plead my Africanness. And it's an area where maybe I still need more work, or I have chosen not to work on. Yeah? And I'll explain what I mean. So I was raised by very strong men, and they what you're expected to do when you face challenges is you deal with it. Yeah. Because by sharing too much, you're vulnerable in a kind of way, right? And I have struggled, but I still do not feel like I can. So when I struggle with things, I deal with them myself, and I may not talk to a lot of people. The ones that I feel concern the family and the wife, yes, we can talk about those, but there's some that I feel that I still need to be strong. That there's some things I might be going through that I don't feel I need to expose the wife to those challenges. And if you bring the Western perspective, you say, this guy is full of what, what. But that's my Africanness. I feel that I need to be the strong person, and that sometimes showing that vulnerability may then lead other people to be vulnerable. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but it could be a failure, but it's something that I was raised in and something that I've struck, that I'm not sure I want to change too much. So when I fail, I don't talk. I may not talk too much. Including, so some men will talk to other men, but in my case, I don't even talk to other men. I feel like, okay, something's going on here. I've got to figure it out myself. Sometimes I talk to my wife, but if I feel like it's going to cause her too much stress, and that her stress will not add to my stress again, I just deal with it myself. She complains about it, but I'm not sure I'm willing to do on that one yet.
That one is still work in progress. Thank you. And I want to thank both of you at this point as we wrap up and get to the last 5 minutes of this conversation. I want to thank both of you for being very open, it takes a lot to not know who is on this call and be saying, this is not something I'm done with yet. And, this is not something my wife is happy with yet. It just takes a lot. There's still just a lot of work that we have to do around these communications. But I think it also humanizes, every other man who is not on this stage, whose wife is complaining about these same things that I am complaining on behalf of all the 4 billion women in the world about. So Imam Olajide, let me go to you, and I want to flip a very big script here now. You hear all the time, the wife the wife didn't go to school because she wanted her husband to go to medical school. So she put her career on the back burner. Or the wife took time off work to take care of the kids, take maternity leave, and she couldn't get back to work. The wife did this. The sacrifices always seem to be from the women. And we don't hear a lot of sacrifices from the men's side. Can you think about a sacrifice that you've had to make and you'd be like, no, this one was just because of Molly or because of your wife. It was not for me. If it was me, I would still be living in Ijebu right now. I would not be in California.
Wow. That's an excellent question. I think my straight forward answer to that would be yes. I have, in so many instances, made personal sacrifices for my wife and the family. No doubt about that. Even though I may not be at liberty to go into the details of some of those, but it's something that I do feel really, really good about. It's a decision that, looking back, I cannot say I regret making. And I want to add this real quick. Ideally, this is not something that should be open to a debate. Both spouses, I think, should naturally be inclined to making sacrifices for each other. This should be a direct result of love, affection, and their commitment to the marriage. It shouldn't be something that, if I have to, sacrifice, make some extreme personal sacrifice for my wife or my family, that should not be up to a debate. It shouldn't be something I'll second guess under normal circumstances. But unfortunately, the reason why we see couples in situations when they are not willing to commit to personal sacrifices will be some fundamental, basis of the relationship are missing. So in an ideal situation, we should not even be second guessing that. It should go both ways. The husband should, as a when needed, be able to make personal sacrifices for the wife, and vice versa. And in actual fact, based on your opening comments, that we see it a lot from women. I can tell you from my own personal experience, I even see it more from men now, who are more bold and willing to tell the whole world, oh my goodness, I sacrificed my entire life for my family. I did this, I did that, I did that. I think some men are opening up now, contrary to past belief, and, boldly and proudly saying what they have done for their wives and family and the extent they have gone in supporting them. So in summary, once again, in an ideal situation, it should go both ways. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Pato, this question was not assigned to you in original. Oh, but Mr. Patrick Okigbo. This question was not, part of your original question, but my phone is lighting up. People saying, no, I want to hear what Patrick thinks about that question. Actually, two people have asked me. No, I want that. This is such a good question. They want to hear about sacrificing.
So my view is what you do for yourself is not sacrifice, right? If you see that your family is yourself, what you give up for your family, you're not sacrificing. If you go back to where we started, which is that there's respect and love and that you're sharing and the decisions you're making is in the best interest of the family, it can be sacrifices that you've looked at all the options and you've picked what is best for the unit, yeah? So if we bring it and make it a bit more personal, there's a career choice growing up, I always thought I would make. A career choice I always thought I would make. Then I marry a very private woman and she says to me, that career choice puts our matter in public and that she doesn't want it. And I've had to give up on that grudgingly, but I understand. Yeah. So I'm trying to say that it's not just the woman that makes the sacrifice. And when it's done, it shouldn't be seen as a sacrifice. It should be seen as something that you're doing for the unit. Yeah. And that's the way I approach it, especially if there's that understanding, if that there's that respect, love. I don't see why you should want, a chip on your shoulder that you've done something that is in the best interest of your family, which is really by extension your own best interest.
You know what? I want to first of all thank you, gentlemen.
Can I add something real quick to that?
Please.
Yes, just picking up from what Pat just said, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of, conflicts in relationship. And to the extent that, when that becomes really pronounced, and that is when you see spouses coming out to really say what they have done or the sacrifices they've been through as a result of, emotional pain, based on their current situation and what they're experiencing. So it might not be that, they really want to brag about that, but situations have really pushed, couples and spouses into really wanting to showcase the sacrifices they've made for their families.
Thank you very much. Before I let you go, and Pato, you can see that the audience wants me to continue to call you the name I called you before you were rich, which is Pato. But there's a question I just got that I want to quickly ask the Imam this question. And this is from a Muslim sister who says, when men do their obligations because of the fear of God and do well at them, is that love and care, or that's a separate compartment? Because I think this is very critical for women. And I hope you can see the reason why a woman might be asking this question.
Exactly. I think it's a combination of all of the above. And that is exactly the way the Quran puts it. If you look at that very popular verse in Surah Al-Rum that, all the Imams recite during wedding and nikah ceremony, it's all in there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I've placed between you two love, compassion, mercy. And so the fear of Allah is one, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that I am the third party in your relationship that is interested in your relationship. So as a result of that, you have to fear Allah because He has chosen Himself as the third individual in your relationship. So you need to give Him that regard. But at the same time, if you look at that verse that establishes the marital relationship in Islam, all of the things we have mentioned are included: love, mercy, compassion, tranquility. So we cannot really separate the fear of God from all of that. So if you're a Muslim brother, just saying you are doing this because you have the fear of God in you, you have taqwa, as we call it, God consciousness. Okay, yeah, that is perfect. That is excellent. But at the same time, you need to absorb all of the other, principles that God has, made important in a family relationship: love, mawadda, wa rahma, sakina. All of that you have to combine as well. So I hope I've been able to address the concerns of the question.
You have. And the final word will go to you, Pato, and that is, which of your attributes or qualities do you not want your future son-in-law to have? Because I know you have a daughter that is the apple of your eye. Which one of your own good qualities do you not want her husband to have?
I wish, well, first of all, we have to pray that by the time they're old enough, they want to get married, because things are changing. But let's pray for that. And if she does, I hope that my future son-in-law communicates more than I do, because I think that would save them a lot of problems. I wish I communicated more. I'm trying, but I'm sure I'm not where my wife wants me to be. And I wish that my son-in-law would communicate way better than I do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Imam Monsur Olajide, and my brother and friend, and the person that's going to make me a commissioner in a southeastern state, Patrick Okigbo. Thank you so much. Please, if you're watching us, do not go away.
Thank
My
you.
next set of brothers are coming on right now, and you're still at CEO. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to bring in my next guest to the hot seat. And you know, my niece or nephew was asking me yesterday. She said, all the people that you are bringing to Shio, all these men, do you know them from somewhere? I'm like, funny enough, I went to school, I've traveled, I've known these people before they were rich, before they were big men. And this is the first time I'm having to put all of them in one room together. And I'm so honored to bring another set of my brothers and my friends, Rotimi, Raji, and Tosin Okojie. Welcome to Shio.
Thank you, Tokwe. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
And what you might not be aware of is that Rotimi and I, this is not the first time that we're sitting in the same room.
I know. I was telling him, I said, you don't want to know who I've paired you with, because I know both of you know yourselves very, very well.
Yes, for what, 30 years?
30 years now.
30 plus years, yes.
30 plus.
Yes.
Wow. And I've known Rotimi for a long time. I was telling my nephew yesterday that we traveled together to Ghana, Togo, and some places as young 17, 18-year-olds. I don't even know what I was thinking, following a bunch of strangers on a bus outside Nigeria. But I was very aware that both of you were friends, and I wanted that kind of energy as we have this conversation. So welcome to the second half of the Men on Board segment. I'm going to ask you the same questions and I know you were backstage when I was asking Patrick and Imam Olajide those questions, and I'm going to ask you the same set of questions, but I'm going to flip who gets what. So I'm going to start with you, Rotimi. And so I want to start with the idea of masculinity and leadership in the home. Culturally, many of us were taught that the man must have the final say. But what happens when that belief no longer serves your relationship? Have you ever had to shift this thinking of I must have the final say? When and how did that begin?
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk on CEO. I know that this has been a project you've been on for quite a long while, and we've had some conversations about it. But my own ideas of running a home, they're founded in a combination of both culture and religion. I'm Muslim, as you know, and when you layer in Yoruba culture with Islam, you realize that it doesn't really serve you so well to quote unquote always have your way, because everything that you're doing is based on the foundation of I owe my responsibility of what I'm doing to something that's bigger than me, that's bigger than us meaning my wife and myself. So I'll give you an example. My wife, she works full time. But the way I was brought up, I saw my dad doing this, and I know this is also Islamic. She doesn't pay any bills. Not only does she not pay any bills, she gets an allowance, even though I know sometimes the allowance is a little bit, here and there. As I'm sure she'll probably tell you. So that is something that has always been the case from day one when we got married. We don't fight about things like that. Like, now that I think about it, I think probably the only fight we had about money, I'll probably say later on, because I think if the opportunity comes up, but we don't fight about things like that. And so trying to quote unquote give up the right to make certain decisions, usually it's based on whether or not she and I see eye to eye. Now, our dynamic is a little different. I'm the first in a family of 4. She's the first in a family of 7. And so we actually agree on more things than we disagree on. It comes to like decision making in the house and those types of things. So I guess in that particular ramification, I feel very blessed.
First of all, of all the things you said that were very nice, one of the things that I took away and I've put in the chat box is we need to normalize collecting allowances from husbands even when we work, with plenty exclamation marks after that. Maybe because you're a banker, but Tosin, let me go to you. Our parents and religion, especially based on human interpretation, and of course culture, like Rotimi mentioned, really shape how we look at relationships and gives us some tools that we're supposed to use to navigate these relationships. Have there been any of those tools that you've had to unlearn, reject, change, step away from? And how did you struggle with that?
Okay, interesting question. So once again, thank you for having me. I know this is the continuation of a very interesting discussion that we had, and it's a pleasure to be here. Just so to the question around, well, first, same context. I know I've known Rotimi for a while now. I'm going to give you the perspective from a husband, a Christian, and a pastor. My own perspective. Now, when I look at the issue of culture and religion and the influence on how the model of marriage sort of plays out, I think of it very intellectually, and you'll find that even in my engagement with my wife, what worked 50 years ago was 100 years ago was adequate for the time, but it doesn't work for the times we're in. The culture, in a sense, has changed. The environment has changed. The dynamic has changed. And in fact, I think that this is one of the things that especially men struggle with. And it creates a measure of friction in the home because we grow up, in a sense, codified. You watch the marriages ahead of you, your parents, your uncles, your aunties, and that becomes the model for, oh, great, this is what to do, because we learn a lot by seeing. And so you come into a situation or a circumstance where it's very different. It's a different culture, different expectations. And the program that worked 50 years ago isn't going to work now. And to give a bit of perspective, my wife and I were exact opposites. I'm a firstborn, she's a lastborn. Now, we've done our psychometric profiles. On every dichotomy, we're opposite. And early in our marriage, that created a bit of tension, especially because I'd also grown up in a home where the daddy's law is law, word is law. I knew that my mom had influence. I knew she knew how to, get her way. But literally, if my dad said something, that was it. There was no question, at least no outward questioning of it. And he, it was trust him. He's going to make all the decisions. And then I get into marriage, and that's not the case. So early on, it created a number of tensions. I know we can laugh about it now, but something as simple as I'm more extroverted, my wife is more introverted, and I would say very early in our marriage, where do you want to go for dinner? And I feel I'm already compromising, because normally it would have been, this is where we're going for dinner. Mm-hmm. But she's thinking through it. I'm like, well, I'll just make the decision and let's move on. But that gets me in a lot more trouble, or that got me in a lot more trouble than resolution, until the point I learned about kind of just, it's a partnership and it's teamwork. And there's a mutual visible respect, because of course our parents respect us, but there's a mutual visible respect that goes into even the decision-making process. So that's one of the things where, and I'll say it's a different world. And so the formula for our parents is not the formula that will work for us. And it's probably not the formula that will work for our children, because they will live in a very different society as well.
And I'm going to get to that children bit in a little bit now. And I want to also say that one of the reasons why we're doing this and having this conversation openly is so that other men can also hear and, have discussions among men about some of these issues that we're raising. Because believe me, some of these issues that you're talking about that we're raising here are issues that we women complain about all the time. So it's good for us to hear from you men, and for men to hear from you men, so that we can know that we're all not a bunch of crazy people. Rotimi, let me go to you and bring it back a little bit to the workplace. You are a big man, executive in a bank, but you're also an African man, a Yoruba man for that matter. And, I said this in the last segment, that there was a recruiter, an executive recruiter who is Chinese American, who told me once that, African men are the most difficult candidates to place, because they go to interviews with chips on their shoulder, especially when they're being interviewed by women. what part of your Africanness have you had to, switch the code and leave at the door when you are inside the bank?
Well, mine is actually rooted, believe this or not. Maybe I had a little bit of this before I met my wife, but my wife helped me to solidify this. And if you really think about it, right, as African men, we have all kinds of, cultural ideas about, what the woman's place should be. Back home, cooking, taking care of the kids, and which has its own importance. But coming out to the West tells you that, there are women who can basically have it all. If you think about some of the more powerful, CEOs in the world, whether it's PepsiCo or those types of things, those are people that when you listen to their stories, they have, they're the big boss when they're in the office, and when they come home, it's just total submission to the husband and all of that to give them that respect. Mine has always been more of knowing that I don't have a daughter, for example, but if I did, seeing how, for example, my father-in-law, managed and raised my wife, for example, pushed her to be the very best at whatever it is that she wanted to be. So as a father, you would push your daughters, or you push your daughter to be the very best. But then as a man, when you get into the workplace, you want to put the woman down, so to speak, to say, well, this is your place. So it's almost like an interesting dichotomy, if you want to put it that way. And so for me, I look at women more as what exactly does this person bring to the table? Now, just like men, some people are, they know their stuff. You listen to them, you're like, okay, here's a smart cookie, here's someone I can learn something from. And same thing with women. So usually what separates my interaction with them is, do I feel like this person is someone that actually brings something valuable to the table? And so, I've had, to deal with female bosses, which ironically, I seem to actually work a lot better with, quite frankly, than some of my male bosses over the course of my career. Maybe it's just because maybe it's a firstborn thing. You tell me to do something, I get it done, and what's next. And so, I've been fortunate to have had to learn that. And so unlearning was not as difficult for me, just because, I kind of look at things from that perspective. If that makes any sense.
Thank you very much. Tosin, let me come back to you. And Rotimi said he doesn't have any daughters, which is true, but you have two lovely daughters. And, you said about watching your parents, and just like you were watching your parents, your daughters are watching you, and they're watching your interaction with your wife. And so I wonder, what are some of the things that you want them to see differently than what you saw with your father and your mother?
So probably there are a couple of things. I think that's an interesting question. So I'll say maybe two things. One is a different form of, I'd say, collaboration and teamwork. That model of the strong man leader it doesn't work in this day and age. And I think that sometimes is what causes it. And when I say strong man leader, the absolute authority versus the appreciation that everyone brings something to the table, and the combination of the two is greater than the sum. In some of the parts, it's greater than the addition. And so I think that's one thing. And so even in my engagement with my wife, no matter how long sometimes it takes, there's the mutual respect of, there's certain things that no matter how right I feel about it, we won't move until we're both on the same page. And that's a lesson that I've had to learn over time. They say, if you move alone, you move fast. If you move together, you move far. I think that's one piece to it. And then probably, and this is just more general, even just time. I think the construct of, and maybe Rotimi mentioned this, the construct of expectations of a man. And I keep saying that maybe 50 years ago, a man knew his role as society would define it. Provide, protect, lead. Simple. It wasn't about building relationships in a lot of situations. It wasn't about emotions or vulnerability. Food has got to be on the table. Someone's got to go out and get it. It's me. if there's any danger to the family, I step in and do that. But it was a burden that men took on themselves. And I use the word burden very loosely so I don't get into trouble. But yes, it was a responsibility, but it was clear that was it. I think I want my daughters to see that there is more to a husband and a father than I can do these things, regardless of what your mom can do. But there is also the emotional development, the character development, the expression of love, so that you're not going to look for love anywhere else because you don't find it here. Understand that you are your own person and you're loved, and you're worthy of it, and you can aspire. And that whole balance of also, I'll say, living life. Life is a set of experiences. There will be highs, there will be lows, which is something that sometimes our parents never showed. And it's interesting. You hear people say things like, I didn't know we were poor because there was always food on the table. And I think that's a great thing. But there's a space of not saying we're poor, but helping children to understand even the struggles that you're going through. There's a friend of mine that says, even in her prayers, she lets her kids, lady, so I'm guessing her husband is involved too, understand what they are praying for, so that when it comes through, it's also an appreciation for the way life goes, where sometimes you've got to step out in faith. So it's that robustness of life as well that I would like them to take, which is integral to being part of a family unit in this day and age.
There's something that you said that I want Rotimi to also talk about, especially, among us Yoruba people, this whole shifting economic burden, if you would say, or economic role. It looks like the women I'm a woman, so I can say, it looks like we've embraced our own shift, that before we didn't used to have to provide or support the family. Now the world says we should support. The world says we should provide. So we rose up to our responsibility. But it looks like a lot of men are still dragging their feet. They want the woman, they welcome the extra cash that the woman is bringing to support the family. But they don't want to wash the dishes when she cooks the food. They don't want to cook dinner when she cooks breakfast. It looks like it's still hard for men to catch up a little bit. What do you have to say about that, Uncle?
Well, that's an interesting, very interesting twist, or interesting question to pose. I think that there's a very interesting. This is an Ondo proverb. My wife is Ondo, and she always says how you look at someone with knocking knees, as we call it in the U.S., and they have, they have something on their head, and you're wondering, why is this thing on this person's head so crooked? And then the person will tell you, well, you're asking me why what's up top is crooked. Didn't you look at the fact that I've got knocking knees? So it's just another way of saying that you have to look at the root cause of certain things before, you start addressing, issues. So like I said earlier, in my case personally, I've always been blessed to be able to provide, and not letting my wife, unless she decides that she wants to, that's fine. Again, that's rooted in both Yoruba culture and in Islam. However, things like, doing dishes and things like, there are times when, even as a man, you come in and you say, okay, you know what? This woman has tried to do. Let me go there and do something, and, some parts of this is actually American culture, which you laugh at. You say, what are some things you can do if you really want to, get on the side of your wife? You may have done something that you shouldn't have done, and she's going to be upset. So before she comes home, you just jump in and you start doing all kinds of errands in the house and cleaning this and cleaning that, and and of course that has its own value in terms of just helping to run a smooth home. I guess one of the biggest things that you learn, or I've learned, is conflict is part of the relationship. It's just something that's supposed to come with it. It's not a do or die type of affair. And so when you find yourself in that situation where that shift occurs, in my case, it hasn't. I still pay all the bills, and I feel very good about doing that. My wife is happy that she doesn't. She gets the allowance, but that does not preclude me from still doing things. There was something that My wife was watching this. She probably doesn't know this, but so I have this thing where, in the bathroom, after, using the bathroom, like brush your teeth in the morning, whatever, on the sink, I always wipe it clean every day. And I actually observed this with one of my mentors. He's actually the one who's helped me with my career, probably anything. He's an African-American gentleman, highly successful, has gone to the highest places you can think of in the financial services industry. I had the pleasure of visiting his house one time. His wife, who has an MBA and everything and all of that, I mean, she's well accomplished in her own right. But I go to this guy's house. Here's somebody that, at work, it's almost like you're almost bowing and counting for him. And he's got the mop and he's wiping the table, he's cleaning this, he's cleaning that. And I'm like, this is not, but your wife stays at home. Like, I didn't say this out, but I think he probably read my mind or something. And he comes to me and says, Rotimi, you have to, you have to make sure that you're doing both sides, because even though she stays at home, she's actually managing the home. She's taking care of all the kids, doing all these different things, homework, picking them up, dropping off, and all of that. You just coming home and strutting your legs because you've got a long day at work doesn't really, help with, making her feel like at least she's being valued. So I take doing some of those things as just adding value to, to the relationship.
I honestly, I could pick up so many gems that you just dropped here, but I think seeing a different example than what we're traditionally used to seeing was a very helpful thing. And hopefully the men who are listening, who are watching, can attest, can really attest to this. Tosin, there's another question that came up to me as Rotimi was talking that I felt I needed to ask you. There are people who would, come to you as a pastor or as a counselor and say, this is my struggle with my wife. She doesn't listen. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do X, Y, Z. But most of the time, what I try to explain to some men is that when a woman feels emotionally insecure, that insecurity can show up in a gazillion ways and in a gazillion kinds of behaviors. Do you see this? And how can we explain to men the impact of emotional insecurity on a woman's behavior? How do you explain this to me?
That's a trick question, because whatever I say, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But I'll say a couple of things. One is, and actually I think the crux of all of this is really about understanding. So you've got to understand from the man's perspective, you've got to understand your wife. You've got to understand how she behaves when she's really passionate about something, when she might be overwhelmed, how it comes out, so that it's less about the vehicle and more about the message. There's something else that is bothering her, but if you get wrapped up in everything around it, you miss the message, which is the important message, whatever it is that is being communicated. I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, there's something going on here. And so it's something that you build over time, but it's getting to understand your wife. I think I also speak for the other side, which is a lot of times not enough value is given to. So you talked about emotional and all that. Men are very emotional. I think that we've just not been culturally seen as being able to be emotional. And just on personal, I saw my dad cry once actually twice, to be fair, twice. And I've known my dad all my life. Now, crying is not necessarily, the reason that you should go cry all the time. One was when we lost my mom. The other was when we lost my mom's dad, which is, very early, who he was close to. But I say this from the point of view of men are also under quite a lot of pressure. So sometimes it's the understanding on the other part as well. There's always an expectation that, in quotes, the woman can be emotional and can say things and do things, understand her. And that's fair. The flip side of it is, it does not behoove that the man is not an emotional creature who is also under different pressures and is also facing things. But what tends to happen is, rather than find the commonality to kind of move forward, it's always the contention of, to your point, why did you talk this way? Why aren't you seeing things this way? Versus kind of like understand. And conflict is to Rotimi's point, it's conflict resolution. It's a part of every marriage. You will never always be on the same page. You will have differences of opinion. You will have positions you're passionate about, that because you have different upbringings, different backgrounds, different modes of thinking, which is the great thing about marriage, because you can bring the best of two worlds to create something. But to that point, it really is about understanding on both fronts.
And let's talk about men being emotional. Let's talk about that. I think this is such a good segue. And so I'm going to go there with you, Rotimi. Think about the time that you felt deeply, deeply misunderstood in your relationship. If you, as much as you can tell us, as much as you can tell a bunch of strangers, what was the misunderstanding about, and what did that moment teach you? More importantly, what did it teach you about your own needs, your own fears, your own anxieties, and of course, your own growth area as a human being?
That's a loaded question with multiple parts, but I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here. So this was a very long time ago. It's very early in our marriage. And I think this probably was more from the banker in me than anything else. I've been in banking 20 plus years now. And at this particular time, my wife actually earned more than I did when she was working. And I was trying to stress the fact about saving and, putting money aside for the rainy day and always having like a nice nest egg somewhere. That was what I was trying to communicate. But the first thing that came out of my mouth is, well, you make more money than me. And I was not able to complete the sentence or something. And it was, oh, so that's the issue. You feel like this and this. And I was just like, and I never, for several years, now that I think about it, I actually never got to complete that sentence, because it was completely lost in the fact that what I was trying to say was, you have the capacity to save more. Now, mind you, like I said before, it wasn't like, she was paying any bills. I was paying all the bills. There was no problem with that. But, obviously, with our own family dynamic, she'd been in the U.S. longer. And for those who've lived here, you'll know that sometimes the longer you've been in the West, in the U.S. in this case, with the right amount of opportunities, the much better it is that you get opportunities for you to grow career from a career perspective. So, in trying to explain that and now realizing, oh my God, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that, because it has nothing to do. I don't have any insecurities with the fact that my wife makes more. I mean, I'll hear it. I mean, we've got friends who was like, well, she makes more, she needs to contribute more. And I guess the Yoruba person in me comes and says, man, you should be ashamed of yourself now. I should do your wife, you shouldn't be asking your wife for this kind of stuff. It's not like you don't make enough to be able to do stuff. And in my case, thankfully, she willingly does different things. Sometimes the argument comes from, okay, I know you have your money, but you can't just be doing that without telling me first, type of thing. But what that taught me more than anything else is that while being candid and expressing candor in a relationship is important, how, when, and then just making sure you have the right moment to share is also critically important as well. And so, thinking about it several years later, I think we had the conversation not too long ago. And I said, what I was really trying to say was, there's 401k options. You can put money in, so that way you don't even see the money, or you can go look for some obscure credit union that's like 50 miles away from the house or something, so that way it makes it difficult for you to pull the money out. Obviously, when we were talking about this, online banking wasn't as good as it is today. But that was something that I took from it to say, if I'm trying to get something across, start with what the end is, and then kind of work my way backwards, as opposed to, I guess, the first thing that comes to my mind. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Tosin, let me come back to you. And you're the one who started this conversation about emotions and stuff. How were you taught to deal with emotions like disappointment, like grief, like failure, as a child or as a young man, whether through home or just as the way society just conditioned you as a man growing up in Nigeria? And how has that changed or shaped how you deal with such setbacks today?
So I guess it's very simple. Put a band-aid on it, suck it up, and move on. that really was the expectation of men, and it went for everything. If there's disappointment, put a band-aid on it, suck it up, move on. Even if you succeed, don't rest on your laurels, just move on. So there was always this societal expectation that, you know, men should be these stoic creatures, unemotional machines that just keep going. And, you know, I say this, I mean, the world we live in now, I think this is one of the challenges that a lot of men face, because that there is a lot more going on under the surface nowadays. There's a lot more that you're facing, whether it's in the workplace, raising kids, finances. It's a totally different world. And especially if you're not even in the cultural environment of, say, whatever country you are from, Africa, but you're out in the US, in a sense, you're on your own. You know, yeah, if the bills will come, the IRS will come, everything is, you're on your own in a sense. And so there's a lot of pressure. So that and you know, that stoic, unemotional, non-vulnerable model, but it worked at some point. It just can't work, which is why you see a lot of breakdown. And sometimes even the outbursts in the home are an expression of men have held it in to the point that it just kind of blows up. What I've learned over the years is two things. One is it's okay to be vulnerable. And well, since this is CEO, I'll also speak from a man's perspective to the women, that there has to be room for a man to be vulnerable. So if I take Rotimi's situation, and actually I had a similar situation, but vice versa, where I was earning more money, but I needed to leave that job for sanity, for reputation, for whatever. And I didn't have anything planned, meaning that for a period of time, whatever my wife was earning is what would be moving us forward. Now, I was fortunate that I have a wife that I could go to and say, this is it. In literally for the next, 6 months, who knows, 9 months, because I need to look for a role that is, adequate. I won't be able to put food on the table. It will be all you. And it's interesting, and I'll be vulnerable here. I told her, please, in those 6 to 9 months, just respect me. And I'll explain. I'll explain why. But
I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't.
No, because a man's self-worth a lot of times is tied into his ability, and that's what we were trained at, his ability to provide. And the moment he can't, it's easy to get very fickle. Your wife says, can't you pick up your shoes? And it's like, okay, because I don't have work, that it has now become, I've now become the houseboy. Where maybe before that, it would be like, oh, this woman has come again. Okay, and pick up the shoes. Because and that's why I talk about it's about understanding both sides. And so I was fortunate in that instance, but I would say that vulnerability is a necessity for men. But I'd also encourage not just women, but also other men to create the room for men to be vulnerable, to be able to express themselves, because it's when you're able to talk things out, sometimes you're able to come to a solution. Sometimes if you don't know what's going on in the other person's head, and you don't have that conversation, then when it comes out, you start wondering why, but it's a whole lot of things that have been pent up, or misinterpretations, and at the end of the day, it's a partnership. There has to be that mutual respect and joint. You're building, they say you're building a home, you're building a family, you're building a life. There has to be that joint effort in doing that.
Wow. There's something, I laughed, but there was something that you said that really honestly resonated with me so much. When you said, in those 6 to 9 months, please respect me. And I want to applaud you for being able to say that out loud, because that is something that a lot of men will not say. But we, being women, will just be there talking, and it's not because you're not working or you're not providing, but the disrespect is landing extra hard because of the economic disparity. But the man is not able to communicate and tell the woman that, oh, I'm extra mad right now because you are dragging me essentially on the floor when I'm already on the ground. So thank you very much for being vulnerable. And Rotimi, I want to go to you, on a similar.
If you don't mind, before you go into that, I just wanted to add something. That Tosin said something there that resonated with me when he said, I want to say this to the women, and I want to say that as well. Sometimes it's not even when there is a shift in the man's ability to provide. Sometimes it's just, and I have to say this if you don't mind, but I was watching some videos on social media recently where there was a challenge that said, here's something that a man can do that a woman cannot. I don't know if you've seen that video or not, and the man is with the wife or the girlfriend or whoever in the background, and the man just keeps quiet, doesn't say anything. And then the woman is like, what exactly is it? Go ahead and finish it. And they keep talking and talking and talking and say, well, you made my point. The point I'm trying to get at is there are times where the man just wants that quiet. And, so like in my case, again, I'll be vulnerable again. It's one of those things, maybe you have time off and you're at home and you're just trying to detox because you just had the most stressful last couple of weeks or whatever. And normally, if, you have, like in our case, we have cleaners that come to the house to clean the house, for example. But of course, we don't let them come in unless there's someone in the house. And in this occasion, usually when they come, I guess based on their own code or whatever, they don't want a man to be in the house because it's usually women that do it. But it's like, oh, are you going to be home this time? Because I'm going to send these people over. In my head, I'm like, but if I wasn't at home, you wouldn't send these people here. Like, why? And so it's just, it's a small thing. And it's obviously a communication thing. Now, it would have been different if, 2 weeks before you said, look, I'm thinking about scheduling these people to come on this day. I don't know if I'm not going to be home. If you're going to, okay, that's different. But it's almost like you're thinking of the thing that I just want to be quiet. I want to just do nothing. And now I have to now be moving from one room to another just to allow these people. So I just want to put that out there for the women to say, you might look at it like you're being efficient, but the way we're looking at it is, so it's because I'm at home. You just feel like I'm just at home. I should be doing something. I shouldn't just be there doing nothing, type of thing. So I just want to put it out there.
I'm sorry. This is so funny, but it resonates with me so much. So much. And that whole what a man can do, what a woman cannot do, be on their own. I cannot. This is the part where I'm learning. I'm thinking, you're on your own doing what now? Like, we're here. We're here. We're supposed to be either having a conversation or helping each other or doing something. That you are. What is that? What's happening there? And honestly, I'm just very grateful that we're having this conversation, because this conversation is as much for me as it is for the rest of you, because I'm learning a lot of things, and I really wish my husband was here learning, but I can see him outside digging the ground. But Rotimi, the question I was going to ask you was, when was the last time that you felt like you failed at something? And who, if anyone, did you talk to about it? And you cannot say, oh, I always talk to my wife. No. Let's go down this continuous path of vulnerability.
In this, I don't think I could have talked to my wife on this one, because the failure, quite frankly, had to do with my wife. Mine, it was threefold. Again, being the African and the Yoruba person that I am, I think they call us the sandwich generation, because we have to worry about how we care for our parents and also how we care for our siblings. Mine had a little twist to it, because like I said earlier, with my wife also being the first child, she also had a lot of expectations too from her parents. And so for me, it was really more of, what kind of role am I playing as a son-in-law, and as a husband? And, early on in our marriage, because we're the first to get married, we're the very first of all the kids to take that next step. You know how it is. Go to school, graduate with your degree, and then the next thing is, okay, so where's the wife, where's the husband? That's what the pressures you get and all of that. So once you check the box of, okay, here's the husband, here's the wife, then of course the next one is, where's the kid? And then, you know, they try to dictate everything to you. And, you know, now that I'm a father too, I'm kind of catching myself doing a little bit of that. So I'm understanding what they were going through when they were doing it. But, you know, failure was more in the sense of, you know, not being able to meet the expectations for my in-laws. There are certain things they expected me to be able to do for them. My parents expected me to do certain things. Both sets of parents wanted me to prioritize them over the other. Well, you're my son-in-law. We give you our daughter now. You have to be able to, you know. And then look at this young man. We spent all these years building you up, and now all of a sudden you got married, and now you have to. And then, of course, to now complicate the whole thing, my wife is like, so it's your parents now, or so is this and that. And so it's just having to manage through all of that. Tosin said this, there's a lot of quiet, you know, battles that as a man that you're fighting, especially when you have that focus of failure is not an option. It's not an option. You know, things happen to you, you just chalk it off and you move on. You're talking about, you saw your dad cry twice. I never saw my dad cry, not once, until he died, not once. I never saw it. And in this instance of failure, the one person that I realized over time that I could really talk to, no judgment whatsoever, is actually my mom. Now that I look at it, I mean, Imam would probably qualify as my older brother, if you look at it from an age perspective. And it's probably not the kind of person that you say, let me go and give my problems to. But, you know, he will have his own perspective. He's also Yoruba, which makes it easy. And it will kind of explain certain things. And, you know, you look at it this way. This is what the Sunnah of the Prophet says that you do. This is what the Quran says you can or cannot do. But at the end of the day, you have to find that happy balance, especially since we're not living in Nigeria. You know, and where you live, in this particular instance, it has a lot of impact on how, you know, one reacts to certain things. You know, if I could dial the clock back, there are certain things I probably would have done differently. My mother-in-law before she passed, for my father-in-law, who was, you know, for me, he and my father, they had way too many things in common. You know, and I just felt like their generation was that generation where they really wanted to make sure they had people or they had children who could really carry on. And I just felt as a first that I didn't have a choice. I had to make sure that I was that person. And so my mom is the one person I talk to. There's no judgment. There's no, you know, I can be very vulnerable with him. I'm always nervous. I'm going to be transparent. I'm nervous being vulnerable with my wife. Not out of disrespect to her, but more from, you know, a conversation will come up later and then she will just pull something out of it, which she's probably in her mind just trying to make a certain point. But for a guy, it's just like, okay, you know what? Lesson learned. From here, it's not happening again.
But you people are like that too. You people, hey, as there should be a saying like, as unforgiving as a man. Because you people will be there preaching about something, and the next thing I'm like, uncle, that happened in 1922 during Bishop Ajayi Crowther's time. Why are we talking about it today? But no, I just remembered. Let me just not bring my matter out in the open. But Tosin, let me go to you for one of the final questions. And I just want to say how I just posted an audience comment from our group chat. And I want you guys to know how people are feeling about this level of vulnerability and this openness. I want to thank you so much. Tosin, let's talk about this. We've heard it before. That woman, she didn't go to school because her husband needed to go to medical school. Then he now finished medical school. He now went to get married a second wife, or he abandoned her and the kids. We've heard it before. The woman, she relocated from Ijebu to Ibadan or to Shogbo where there was no internet because of the man. And the man got there and became just nuts. It seems as if the narrative is, if anybody has to make a sacrifice, you know, it's the woman who has to always sacrifice. Is the woman who has to take a step back out of the career ladder. Blah, 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 blah. And we've been okay with doing it traditionally. But I want to ask you, has there been any sacrifice that you have had to make that you know that, is me. I'd rather be living in Ibadan right now, not be living in Maryland. And I'm doing it just solely, not for my family, but for my wife.
So interesting enough, I thought this might come. So I asked my wife what's her thought. So now, and I'll tell you my answer, and I'll tell you her answer. And my answer actually ties into something that Rotimi said around, and I think it's important that men have people that can speak to them and they will listen. And everybody needs to have people that, not just that you can take things to when you're pondering on them, but when sometimes, even if you feel you're going off the rails, someone can call them and say, have a conversation, and you calm down and listen. That being said, so my simple answer would have been the biggest sacrifice is time. And that sounds interesting. And I'll preface it with a story. Very early in our marriage, I grew up where everyone goes to church, same car. You know, they'll tell you the family that prays together stays together. Always on time, never late. But I have a wife who takes her time. And so Sunday mornings, every Sunday morning, something will happen. I would go to church just face squeezed up, late, wondering what's going on here.
The pastor is frowning.
You know, until I spoke to a senior pastor, a friend of mine, we were friends beyond that. And it's like, why don't you guys just come in two cars? And that's, you know, and it just changed my perspective. Point being, but even till date, you know, I see anytime we need to be somewhere, I'm always like, got to be there on time. Every time I kind of say, you know what, just take it easy. It's her, let her be. Whenever she's ready, I'll go there. I personally feel it's a sacrifice because whether you can call it a concession on values, whether it's something that is important to me that I say, you're more important. And so, you know, I will prioritize you and your happiness over this. I see that. So, but my wife's answer when I asked her is that
no incoming call.
You allow me to, basically she said, I allow her to be herself. So it's a, despite what I probably would prefer. And I think that's why I said it sort of ties in. In other words, it's easier if I have things my way. It's easier if I live the life that was the model of the generation before me. But that I'm willing to kind of understand and let her be herself, not force myself, but listen, sometimes patiently wait for years because you know, I think that's something that she has come to appreciate. The others, but I'll now say this on a more general note, just on behalf of a lot of men. I think that model of, and it's something to come, that model of I need to provide, protect my family, I think leads to a lot of sacrifices. A lot of men would rather be doing other things. And it starts with the wife. It's two of you to start off with. It's not necessarily about the kids. I might be doing something else. I might even not want to earn. I might live a simpler life. Because men sometimes can be very simple creatures. I have a guy who said, just give me 4 walls, a room, and a place I can order food to eat, and I'm good. Oh, and a TV, by the way. But point being, I think that there are also, and I don't see it as wrong. I see it as a lot of times it boils down to the collaboration of the two to build what is the best for the both. And in that journey, there will be decisions that they might even look like sacrifice. To your point, I've seen couples where the husband will say, okay, I will go to school first, you work, especially in the US. The husband gets the degree and the husband now works and the wife goes to school. And, 10, 15 years later, they are where they want to be because each one of them has had the ability to do what is required at the time in the interest of the common good. Where it sometimes breaks down is if there is inherently no trust, no respect, because there's something to say for a man when you were a village boy in quotes. She was a village girl. Now you are all corporate XYZ. Yeah, why not? You got there. Why can't she get there? Why do you have to go find something that then disrespects what you started with? And so that's the whole different conversation instead of men. So I think there has to always be that trust. There has to be that mutual respect. There has to be that, that common goal. When you come together, man and wife, it's not just, okay, we want to have children. It is, they'll say, spiritually, you are tying your destinies together. In a sense, there is a shared future there should be a great future for both of you that you're both working towards. Yeah.
Okay, so before I ask, my phone is lighting up with all kinds of questions, but there's a comment that I want to read out. Somebody wrote this in our group chat. Some of the bits about men need respect, need peace and quiet after work, etc. I also need. The joke is, am I a man? I hope I'm reading this in your voice. You know who you are that you wrote this. But I hope Sister Tokwe can mention that some/all women need those too. Question is, if the men make room for that, can you make room for us to need peace and quiet? Can you give us space to come back from taking care of the baby all day, from bringing the kids from school, from doing all of those things and say, you know what? I need some time off. I need to just shut down.
If you don't mind, can I jump in? Rotimi, if you don't mind.
Please.
So, and I'll say a couple of things. The first one is for men, until your wife leaves you at home with the kids for, say, a weekend to handle them, you might not appreciate, and a lot of men do appreciate it, but I'm just saying that a lot of times we stigmatize the fact that a woman stays home to take care of the kids and the house as though it is nothing. Absolutely not. If you want to raise your children up well, and if you want to have a good home, there's effort and work that goes into it. Besides that is just as exhausting in a sense as if you were going to do whatever it is that you're going to do outside the house. So I want to preface it with that. I also want to say a lot of times you have to see to be able to do, or you have to speak. When I left Nigeria, I lived with one of my uncles in the UK, and it was transformational. Saturday mornings, he would get down and he would clean the whole house. In fact, if you didn't have your stuff kind of tucked away, he would just pack it. He didn't care, and that is gone. So anything you leave out, he would clean the house. Sundays, everybody out of the kitchen. He's cooking dinner, and all that. And it opened my eyes to, there's a world that if you haven't seen or you do not realize that is not just a possibility, but it is the new world order in a sense, you might not realize, where it's true. Just like women need their time and space, men need their time and space. Women need peace and quiet, men need peace and quiet. Women need appreciation, men need appreciation. And that you're doing one versus the other is not it's a privilege in a sense. I know couples where the man will stay home with the kids and the woman will be the one going out. They have to be in a place where they understand each other to do that, but it's possible is the point I'm making. So that's that I think is where I was going with this.
Tokwe, I was going to add to that to say that my response may be a little bit controversial. Okay. And I think what brought about the whole, wanting that peace and quiet is really not so much the peace and quiet in isolation per se. If I was just laying there or she was just doing nothing and there was nothing that needed to be done and everybody just kind of went around doing whatever was needed to be done in the house, life would be nice and good. The issue is, hey, I'm trying to just do nothing here because I'm trying to detox from whatever it is. And all of a sudden, hey, can you help me do this? Or, hey, these people are going to come to do that and things like that. That's really where the issue is. So, you know, the flip side of that, because I want my wife to be able to be relaxed and all of that. But, you know, we're both coming from a place where we're trying to relax from something. Something that we considered either stressful or tasking, as the case may be. So maybe it's, you know, taking care of the kids, the house, and all those types of things. And so when you think about it from that perspective, now the fact that I'm relaxing, that doesn't mean that when the bills come, I'm going to say, well, you know, I'm just relaxing, I'm not paying the bills this month. And so, you know, if I come home, for example, you already know, okay, I like to eat a cooked meal. I don't care. Put the meal in the microwave, put it in the fridge. I can go in and dish it, warm it up myself, and I'll, you know, go sit somewhere and eat it. But, you know, you come home and then it's like, well, there's nothing in the house to eat, you know, and then you're just like, okay, now you have to ask yourself, and this is what I guarantee I speak for most men here. Okay, do I want to make this an issue? Or do I let me just quietly go outside and go and get Popeyes or something and just, you know, and find, like, I don't know, 2 weeks later and then bring it up and say, that's I think you did that time. That thing paid me off. Really, it was really painful, you know. So it's I guess looking at it from that perspective. So it's not so much we want to rest and throw. There's nothing wrong with that. It's making sure that whatever needed to have been done has already been done, and then the other person can actually make adjustments to accommodate the other person being able to just relax. If that makes any sense.
Wow. You know, I just glanced up at the clock now. I'm like, oh my goodness, we are 16 minutes past our time, past our bedtime. And I could have this conversation forever and ever and ever, but we cannot. I want to thank you both, gentlemen, so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. We had an amazing conversation with Imam Olajide and Patrick Okigbo, and you guys just, you know, added such beautiful icing to the cake. Last question that I have for both of you. What is one attribute that, Tosin, you have that is very good that your children's husbands should not have?
I think it's so it's the prioritization of work. Let me put it that way. I think later in life, and you're aware, you know, we waited a while, and so my wife probably got the brunt of this, where work can be all-consuming over everything for whatever it represents, you know, security, safety, provision, and all that. And it's a lesson I'm trying to unteach myself. I actually even try and make sure that my daughters, they don't see me in front of the laptop all the time. There is more to life than this. You know, life is in relationships and conversations and friendships and learning stuff outside of work. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of people. If you grew up in Nigeria, Africa, it's read, primary school, get in secondary school. You're trying to get into university, read. Yeah, some people found other activities, but it was all about work, whether it was parents, children, just, you know, the only way to succeed is you've got to work harder than the next person. And without decrying the value of hard work, it's just, I would hope that their future spouses are more balanced in terms of just relationship, family, and that time beyond work.
Okay, Rotimi, the last question I'm going to ask you is from is an audience question, and that is, how, in very few words, can a family, a couple, identify the common good and align in their marriage? What is the best way?
The irony of it is that it's going to be something they agree upon before they get married, actually, which, quite frankly, may be missing in a lot of marriages. At least these days, having marriage counseling prior to marriage has become more popular. It wasn't probably like that in the time of even though I know our parents had the form of counseling because when you look at their generation, for example, most of the wives they married were actually given to them. You know, they didn't really have courtship or dating as we kind of see it today. So it's all about communication so that everybody understands what it is that you want to accomplish. And it has to be even so granular When do we want to have kids? Do we want to have kids right away? What do we want our kids to become? I've got a friend who, the way you actually know these people, but I remember talking with them when they first got married, and they both said, we're going to let our kids do whatever it is they want to do. Both of them extremely successful in their own careers. And I said, so you're not going to prioritize like sciences and making sure that they're, how it is in your body. Say you're a doctor, you're an engineer, you're a lawyer. It's one of the three. Anything else after that is not good enough, so to speak. And he said, no, he said, we're just going to let them do whatever. And not surprisingly, but I think one of them right now, the oldest daughter, is into ballet, like full time. And I'm just like, you're a strong group, but as you start having kids yourself, you start to realize that the kids also have their own life, so to speak. So the advice would be that for anything that a husband and wife want to have, they've got to be that communication from the get-go. Because, first of all, I think, Tosin, you said this best. This is a merger of destinies. And the destiny that one person came with, as a man, especially if you grew up in Africa, like you said, Tosin, you're just pushing forward. You want to be the best at everything you can. You want to be known for this and be popular and be wealthy and all these good things. So for me, it's more of making sure that you both have a clear understanding of wanting to go far, as opposed to the man wanting to go fast.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been my absolute pleasure hosting you. Thank you. The women who have been listening in from all over the world, literally all over the world, said to thank you as well. They've made their pleasure and displeasure at some point known. I really want to thank you all, and I hope that this is a conversation that we will always have before every CEO. And for all of the women who are listening, I hope you can still join us. We have another segment coming in. Closed door, no man, on Zoom at 2 o'clock Eastern time. That's in 2 hours time. If you haven't registered, please go to thesheo.org. If you have registered, check your inbox for your Zoom details. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Okwe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Rotimi.
Bye. Bye. Thank you all so much. It's been really, really fantastic. Bringing this segment of CEO to the world, to the public. Is going to live on the internet. So please feel free to share it with your family, with your friends, with your spouses, male, female, with your children that are adults, to hear these conversations. I think we need to normalize having some of these conversations, because it's going to really bring more peace and harmony to us as family units and as individuals. If you have not joined SheEO yet, what are you waiting for? If you're a woman of African descent, of Caribbean descent, SheEO is a space for you. Please go to thesheo.org, thesheo.org. We would love to have you as a member. And if you're not thinking about committing right now, no problem. You can join us for our virtual event this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern time to 5 p.m. The agenda is on thesheo.org. You can see all the things that we're going to discuss with women. We're going to break it down. This one, Shebi, the whole world was watching, so we did not talk too much. We're going to really break it down behind closed doors. And tomorrow, when we meet in Washington, D.C., if you are a SheEO member, please check your email for the login details. We will only live stream to SheEO members, period. If you buy a ticket online, you cannot watch the live stream. The discussions tomorrow are more intimate, they're more private. So if you're not going to be in DC, you can join us on your laptop if you're a SheEO member from anywhere in the world. Thank you all so much. May God bless you. Mwah. Thank you, Joy, my personal assistant and community manager. You've been fantastic. Thank you so much. Goodbye.